Greetings and good afternoon, good evening, those of y'all on the East Coast. Welcome to this edition of Rootwork on this Monday, this Memorial Day. My name is Tonda Sizwe Shimaringa. Did y'all get your barbecue on today? Did you save me a plate? Why or why not? Okay, you should know then. Just know I'm gonna remember that. I'm coming on here today because my guest is someone I've been wanting to catch up with for a long time, and I didn't want to wait another month or so before I broadcast the interview. Brooke Obie is a journalist, an author, a film critic, and a filmmaker, and the editor curator of Black Girl Watching on Substack. Even though there is an African American Film Critics Association, still, Black film critics are few and far in between. As a critic, Obie provides film, TV, and cultural critique through a Black feminist lens, which is even rarer still. Now, before we get into this interview, if you don't know what to do, I am happy, more than happy to remind you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please like, share, and subscribe. Like it now so you won't forget. Share the link. And if you haven't already subscribed to Black Liberation Media or Rootwork, please subscribe to Black Liberation Media and Rootwork. Like, share, subscribe, share the link to the show. All right, so I'm gonna quit running my mouth and let's get into this interview with Brooke Obie. Here with me now is Brooke Obie. She is a journalist, author, film critic, and filmmaker, and the editor curator of Black Girl Watching on Substack. Thank you so much, Brooke Obie, for being on Rootwork today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
You ain't more excited than I am. I am a big fan of your work, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk to you, and I've got a burning question I wanted to ask you. I'll get to all these other questions in a moment, but I'm going to start with this first burning question. I've seen Sinners a few times. I understand you've seen it 3 or more times. Is that correct?
I've seen it 7 times now.
Oh, you're at 7 now. Okay, my bad.
I'm going next week, so it'll be 8 next week.
So it'll be 8 times next week. The question I have for you, do you believe that Sinners is in conversation with Lovecraft Country? And if so, how?
That is an interesting question. I think Sinners is in conversation with a whole lot of things. For Lovecraft Country specifically, I would say maybe the first half of the show. I mean, for one, we have a similar or the same actress, Wunmi Mosaku, is in both Sinners as Annie and also in Lovecraft Country. I think she gets a better break in Sinners than she does in Lovecraft Country. But, I would say for me, what Sinners did that Lovecraft Country was not able to do, in my opinion, was to provide a bit of a balm. Even when we're talking about all of the horrific consequences of Jim Crow, of violent racism, anti-Black racism in the South, that both these properties discuss, Sinners was able to do so in a way that I felt provided a bit more healing and didn't perpetuate as much of the harm as I saw in Lovecraft Country. Lovecraft Country, I thought, was extremely colorist, particularly for Wunmi Mosaku's character. It wasn't just talking about, colorism existing and how bad it is. I think the show itself actually perpetuated colorism against everybody who was darker than brown paper bag. So Journey Smollett's character, where she's able to get off, I think, pretty easily in comparison to the other dark-skinned characters. I think there's a scene towards the end, I think maybe it was episode 7, where we see it was towards the end, I'm not sure which episode it was, but there's a fire that breaks out because of the Tulsa race massacre that happens. And there's a dark-skinned Black grandmother who is on fire, and we see her burning, and it's visceral and it's horrific. And then we see Journey Smollett's character walking through the fire unscathed and just taking her sweet time.
She had an invulnerability spell.
But I think that's that's what I feel like in the writing of the story. It's just the images to me, at the same time, Journey Smollett has this invulnerability spell, and she's walking through the fire unfazed, unscathed. Ingenue Ellis's character is frying. She's frying, trying to hold the doors open for them to, to everybody get back to their time period safely. So she's frying. Journey Smollett's just taking a stroll very casually through this fire, and dark-skinned Black women are burning. And so, yeah, I think there's a conversation to be had there. I think there are maybe some criticisms of Lovecraft Country that Ryan was able to avert in his. So, these are both period pieces in the Black, one is in Chicago, in the North. But, again, it's one of the things that Smoke and Stack say to their cousin very early on in the movie Sinners is that, Chicago ain't nothing but plantations with tall buildings. So yeah, there is a conversation to be had there for sure. I mean, Lovecraft also takes place a couple decades after the events in Sinners. But yeah, this idea of Black people being magic, I think, is maybe a positive conversation between these two properties. The idea of Black indigeneity, our spiritual practices that we brought with us from Africa, that we developed while here, very specific to a Black American struggle, and the ways that helps us to resist, that helps us to survive. Yeah, I definitely think there's a conversation there between both of these shows, but I do think one just does it better. I left Lovecraft Country feeling very upset and sad and gross. Particularly the young dark-skinned Black girl. I think that casting was very intentional. I don't think that a young Black girl who was much lighter skinned would have been turned into a pickaninny. I don't think we would have seen that horrific, that grotesque imagery. Just this character, who again is a child and ends up murdering somebody in the finale. Like these things, it felt like a lack of delicacy, a lack of care, a lack of embracing. I just, the world can be cruel to young Black girls, and I don't want us as a people to replicate that or perpetuate that. And so, yeah, those are my concerns there. I don't know if I have answered your question, but that's how the conversation goes in my mind.
Well, I wanted to get a peek at that. Thank you. When I first saw Lovecraft Country, because when I saw it, I had never seen anything like that before. Haven't seen anything like it since. I was telling people, Misha Green is doing the Lord's work. You need to watch this. Hadn't watched it again. Now, after seeing Sinners, I said, okay, now let me go back and watch Lovecraft Country. And even though I saw it the first time, this second watch, I was like, ooh, this is gory. Ooh, Lord, that's a lot. Ooh. And the trauma, of course, a lot of I didn't realize it as, oh, Montrose is traumatized. That's what that is. I'm just caught up in it. I wasn't examining it. I was caught up in it. And this time I'm both viewing it and analyzing like, oh, that's okay. Ooh, I still think that she did a lot of what has not been done before. And I guess I can characterize it as poking of the bear. which is why we ain't got in season 2 and would never have a season 2. But I wanted to get your feelings, not so much comparison and contrast, but again, what is the conversation that is going on here? The other thing that I think maybe you left out is the prominence of the women culture bearers and spiritual.
Oh, for sure.
And even with the ancestral presence.
Mm-hmm.
It was the women who came back in Lovecraft Country, the women, the female ancestors. But I want to ask you about that.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing too, when I talk about healing, because again, like I'm drawn to those movies, those shows where I feel like something has been healed, not just from me watching it, but the people who are participating in it. You know, I've heard Wunmi Masaku talk about how healing it was for her to be able to connect with this, African spirituality, or this, descendant of African spirituality in her character. And Michael B. Jordan talking about the freedom that he got as playing these two roles, and just the story and all of that, and him actually being able to hug Buddy Guy in character as a vampire. Spoilers, if I don't know if anybody, hopefully everybody's
it's too late.
Yes, but having Vampire Stack hug Buddy Guy's older Sammy character, and how that was healing for Ryan Coogler, who was unable to say goodbye to his uncle, and this movie being something that was a level of closure for Ryan Coogler. Like that is, I can feel that, because I watched the movie and I feel a closure too with my older cousin that I couldn't wait to grow up and hang out with, who was so loving and caring and supportive of me, and died very young. So I felt that even without knowing all the backstory. And so when I watch something like Lovecraft Country, and then I see interviews with like Michael K. Williams, who broke down in an interview shortly after the series was over with the cast, and was talking about how painful it was to go through that process. And, the fact that there was not, his support was not like formal. It wasn't like a part of the production to provide put these cast members through all this traumatic stuff. And there was nothing there that was like physically supporting him or formally supporting him. And his cast members were, picking up the slack there and all of that. But, seeing him, relapse, seeing his loss of life, after that, it just, I like to create stuff that's healing, and I like to watch stuff that's healing, and I like to support stuff that's healing, not just for me as an audience member, but the people who are also making, the work. I want something in them to be healed in the process of. I think that's what makes the best art. I think that's the purpose of art. I think you're unlocking something magical when you're able to do that. And so, yeah, that's more that I gravitate towards that kind of art.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I had a question that let me put it this way. I was going to mention the Hurston-Walker Test later on, but let's get to that right now. You coined the term of the Hurston-Walker Test, and I'm going to be honest, that's when I first fell in love, because the essay that you wrote talking about or critiquing Queen and Slim, I enjoy that much more than the film Queen and Slim. And in that essay, you coined something called the Hurston-Walker Test. Can you tell our audience what that is, please?
Yes. So in the book Barracoon, which is by Zora Neale Hurston, Alice Walker writes a foreword. And so she is praising Zora Neale Hurston's her, not just her writing, but I mean, this is a book where Alice Walker, where Zora Neale Hurston has interviewed one of the last people kidnapped from Africa and brought to America, and way after the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade was supposed to be illegal. So brought over in this illegal ship, the Clotilda, winds up in Africa Town, and Zora Neale Hurston goes down and interviews him later in his life. And it's a very painful book. And so Alice Walker is commenting not just on her as a writer, but her as an interviewer, her as a vessel for this man's story to finally be heard. And that even with all the pain that she's bringing up by asking him all these questions, there's a healing element too, because there is, there's truth. He gets to tell his truth, and hopefully that truth will make it back to his people. And so what Alice Walker is saying is someone who loves you never leaves you alone with your grief. So at the moment they show you the wound that you have, they also show you that they have the medicine. So Barracoon is a difficult read. It's a difficult read. It hurts. It is a wound. And Zora Neale Hurston is revealing that wound, but she is also providing the balm. She's also providing the medicine in that, allowing this man to be able to tell his truth. And so that's what I look at when I look at anything, traumatic, that is a Black story that's on screen in some way. That's what I'm looking for. I'm like, okay, you're showing us the wound. Where is the medicine? There was no medicine in Queen and Slim. It was, let's get the cops to gun down some Black people on screen. Let's give some more fictional names to add to the long list of real Black people who have been murdered by the police. That's not a balm. That doesn't do anything. And it doesn't really feel like it's for us. It feels like it is for a white audience to feel bad and say, oh, I should probably change now, which is not how things work. We have never been able to plead our way out of anti-Black oppression. And so if that's not going to be the case, if watching 12 Years a Slave and watching Patsy get, whipped, brutally almost to death is not going to make white people say, hey, we should end white supremacy, then we're going to have to do something else with these stories. We're going to have to do something else when we're talking about this trauma of Black American life. We're going to have to center the Black audience and how the Black audience would feel and be cognizant of that. And that's what Ryan Coogler did, to the point that there are people out here. I've gotten into, some conversations with people online because they're just like, man, I'm so happy, that we don't have to watch any more Black trauma films. Like, yay, Ryan Coogler, like no more Black trauma. I'm like, everybody died. Everybody died in the movie. Like, what are you talking about? This is a very traumatic movie, but you feel differently, and that's important. The important part here is that you feel differently watching this than you would feel watching Rosewood. There's a balm here that makes you feel like, one, there's more to our lives. There is more to our lives than trauma. We don't exist to perform our trauma for the white gaze. And that's what Ryan achieved with this film. We saw Black people in community. We saw the heist. I consider this, movie like a heist film. That first hour of the movie, these are two brothers who are putting together the most epic heist that they have done yet, which is, the loot is freedom, and they're gathering their team of people, who are all going to help them get to this place together. And they have decided that this juke joint is going to be the place where they can all go and find freedom, whether it's for a few hours, dancing, singing, playing music, being in community together. That is going to be our freedom. And so we see the joy that they have when they are, assembling their team. Yeah, there's some heartache in there a little bit too. We see that Smoke has lost a child. We see him, he's got to reconnect with the woman that he loves, and he's got to convince her, that he still loves her. He wants to be with her. He wants to be around her. He wants her back in his life. and we get to see them, make love. We get to see, the joy of Smoke reuniting with his friend Bo at the grocery store. Like there's a lot of joy and a lot of laughter in that first hour. And I think that's really important. Even Pearline, before her inevitable end for being a sinner, we get to see her pleasure centered. There's this whole, oral sex scene that is solely about her being pleasured. And so, yeah, I think when you have somebody who loves Black people, you see that in a different way. There's a lot of people, I think, who think they love Black people, and maybe that doesn't come out, what comes out in their art might be telling a bit of a conflicting story there. But with Ryan, it does feel like there is a genuine attempt here to show the depth of Black life, that we are more than our suffering, that there is joy here, there is love here, there is family, there is community, there is resistance, and all of these things are existing at the same time as this suffering. And, when that's the case, when we can recognize ourselves, when we see our uncles in Delta Slim, our grandfathers, we see our big cousins in Smoke and Stack, it's telling a real story about the complexity of Black life.
Well, as you know, as a seasoned journalist, you can have your list of questions and then everything can just go out the window based upon the answer to a question on that list. Let me throw this question in real quick, and then I'm going to get back to my list. I have heard concern, criticism / condemnation that the joy you speak of, the community you speak of in Sinners, came as a result of an attempt to establish a Black business, Black capitalism, Black entrepreneurship, and that is something that is sold to Black people as a means of freedom. Therefore, this entire film is just another attempt to get us to support Black capitalism and Black entrepreneurship. And I see you shaking your head.
So, okay, I think there's two different things happening here. Like, is Ryan Coogler getting a whole lot more richer off of this movie? Absolutely, 100%. So is Warner Brothers, and I think there's a call, like, we got to go see this, we got to see this movie. We got to see it more than once so that this movie can be successful. And then we'll show white people that I don't believe in any of that. I saw Sinner 7 times because I really enjoyed the way that the movie made me feel. And I felt compelled to go see it again. I don't subscribe to this idea that Black people have to support the Black man because he's got a movie out. I mean, if the movie's whack, I'm not going to support. Like, it don't have anything to do with me. It does that. So there is that element of it. Like, yes, we are making Ryan Coogler's specific Black business more successful, every time we go and watch this movie. I don't think that's a compelling reason to watch a movie. The other part of this argument, I just think falls apart in the movie itself. Like, I really feel like Ryan Coogler's message is very clear that Black capitalism is not the way. It's not, like, it's doomed from the start. You can see in the beginning, in the opening scene of a Smoke and Stack in front of this old sawmill, there are 3 Black vultures circling that place. This was always going to be a place of mass death and destruction. Like that, I feel like it couldn't be more clear than that. So there are ways that, we've tried to find liberation, and there are a lot of people, I mean, a great deal of people who think that, Black capitalism is the way to liberation. Smoke and Stack very much believed that. Annie absolutely contradicted that message to Smoke's face in her introductory scene. He's trying to take her play money, and he's trying to denigrate the money that the kids pay her with, the plantation money, and trying to give her real money. And she says, I don't want your money. Your money comes with blood on it. And I think that is the most, like, a clear political message that Ryan could be sharing about all of this. I even think just, with Smoke and Stack and their, when Stack becomes a vampire and they're fighting, like it's this, it's the duality. I feel like, Ryan Coogler is a Gemini, which is represented by twins in astrology. I feel like he has put two sides of himself into this battle, the capitalist, this idea of selling out to the white man, allowing the white man to take hold of everything and trying to keep your originality. You got Smoke on the other side, who, even knowing that juke joint was going to be bankrupt within 2 months because of all of the plantation money that everybody was paying with, he still would not let that white man and his trio of scavengers come into the club, even though he was tempted with the money, just as the devil is wont to do. I've got money, I can pay. And Smoke was like, that's not it. I'll steal your money. And that feels like a bit more like Robin Hood, but I'm not going to openly just take your money because there's something else underneath it that I don't want. So even in that recognition that, we need money to survive in a capitalist society, we have a conversation going on about capitalism. I mean, capitalism is the enemy. That's the real villain of the movie. So I just think that whoever, like the people that are saying that are not watching the movie closely, and I would encourage them to watch it again, because literally everybody who takes the white man's gold, it's a wrap for them. The two KKK members at the beginning, the couple, Joan and Bert, as soon as they take that gold, it's a wrap for them. Mary, as soon as she takes the gold, it's a wrap for her. When she gives that money to Stack, it's a wrap for him. They don't know what they are agreeing to when they take this money. They don't know all the consequences. But I think the message is very clear. When you accept this money, you accept everything that comes along with that. So you think it's going to get you to this other place, but you are signing on for a soul death. And so I even think, having Stack come in as a vampire at the end, I've seen this theory that I really love, and I think is very true. That Stack, he's coming, he's got the Coogee sweater, he's got the Jesus piece, he's got the Stack ring and all these gold rings and everything like that. And the grills and everything. And I think he is a representation of hip hop that's sold out. It is soul dead. It is disconnected from its radical roots, and he even says, the best day of my life was before all this. It was when I could see the sun, when I was with my family, when I had a connection, even with all the bad stuff that was going on, there was a connection that I had that I no longer have. But I got all this money. I got $100 bills I can put on the table, and I got gold rings, and I got all this flashy stuff resembling, what hip hop has become: commercialized, disconnected, bought and paid for, with the blood of our people, but, profiting the white man at all of these record companies. And I feel like it couldn't be more clear than that. Like, this man, he got his white woman that he was, coveting for all these years. And
she was passing.
She's still a white woman. Like she lived her life as a white woman. She acted like a white woman. She called Sammy boy several times until she realized who he was. Then he was Sammy to her. Then he was a human being to her. Other than that, she had no problem doing what white women do, which was calling him boy. She endangered all the Black people around her several times, despite all Black people. I mean, she was asked to leave 4 different times. And she decided, no, I'm family. I get to stay. Or I wanted to, like, it was the whitest thing I've ever seen in my life. She saw these 2 white people outside. She's like, you don't need a trunk. You don't need your safety, your protection. It's just 3. They're harmless people, because she recognizes.
She was 1932 Karen.
And that's all it was. Genuinely, she was a white woman who thought that her proximity to the Black community allowed her to move easily between both, and you can't. The after capitalism, the biggest villain of this is proximity to whiteness, whether it was Grace or Mary. Their belief that they are protected by anti-Blackness because they can move between both places. You can only move between both places if the world you're living in is anti-Black, and you get to benefit. And so, yeah, he gets his passing white woman in the end, but he's not happy. He's not happy. He's soul dead. And that's what happens with capitalism. When you sell out to capitalism, you lose your soul. And so to see, Smoke and Stack wrestling with this idea, I think is Ryan kind of wrestling with this idea. And he decides, he's not going to kill off the capitalist, because he can't. He's got a movie that needs to make a lot of money. But you go your way and I'll go my way. But understanding that when you let all that stuff go, I mean, Smoke was on the verge of death anyway, but the white man offered him money not to kill him. And he rejected that was his last act. The last thing that he did was light that white man up for telling him he would give him some money. Also because it's really offensive, because Smoke and Stack just gave him a whole bunch of money the other day. So whatever money this white man was giving him is probably giving him his own money back. But
he also intruded in on Smoke's moment, reuniting with his baby and with Annie.
Absolutely. So there were several reasons to light that man up. But I think at the end of the day, what Ryan is saying about capitalism, I feel like could not be clearer. Like, yes, he allows Stack in his, capitalist, white supremacist, existence to continue on, but with a message at that. Like that, if you didn't stay to the end credits, I feel like you missed something. You missed a deepening of the film. I mean, the movie just gets deeper and deeper with each end credit scene. It contextualizes quite a bit, and that end credit scene, I think, very much says what Ryan's position is on Black capitalism, that it is not the way to liberation, that it was always doomed. It was doomed from the jump. If the KKK didn't get him, the vampires were going to get him. The vampires didn't get him, the Irish and the Italian mafia that they stole from was going to come down again. It was always doomed. And so that was a message that I hope that, Black capitalists catch, but also, they won't. They won't get it. But also it seems like, anti-capitalists didn't really get it either, but I feel like it could not have been clearer to me.
I'm speaking with Brooke Obie, author, filmmaker, journalist, film critic, curator, editor of Black Girl Watching on Substack. You also are a holder of a Juris Doctor. You're doing a lot, really are doing a lot. And I appreciate every bit of it. And again, I will repeat, you have a set of questions, but the answers to one or more questions will just take you to a place that you need to explore. But I'm going to get back to some of these questions right now.
Okay.
You talked about, let's see, I don't want to lie on you, don't want to get your words wrong, but in our discussion that we just finished, you talked about not supporting a film, or I forget what it was. Let me just ask the
because
question.
They're Black.
Well, just because they're Black, but also, because, okay, let's just go see this film and hopefully it'll make a lot of money and Hollywood, i.e. white people, will see it and blah, 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 blah. You have argued in one of your essays, the Oscars will not save us.
Oh, absolutely not.
And one of the things you say so much, you state that I'm not asking white people how much harder we need to tap dance for their love. The point of white supremacy, after all, is to be and remain supreme. There is nothing we can do but be beneath them, living or dead, as far as white supremacy is concerned. So I'm asking us, my people, what is it going to take for us to get off their self-defeating, goalpost moving hamster wheel of white supremacy? Now, let me get to this. Let me jump to this part. No amount of Black success within their institutions will ever uproot the anti Black reasons for which these institutions were created in the first place. They were created to hoard wealth, they were created to seize power, they were created to quash organizing and rebellion of the working class. That's from an essay you wrote, The Oscars Will Not Save Us.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming, I didn't check the timeline, that this was written after the Oscars So White #/ mini movement that took place.
Yes. So I do remember that. I think, what was that, 2015, 2016, when Oscars So White came out, and there was this big response. They added 800 new members to the Oscars, and it was still like 80% white or something ridiculous like that. It's still like, and to this day, almost 10 years later, it's still a very, very, very white organization. It just, I think we have to look at the reasons for why an organization was created and believe them. It's the same as, looking to the Constitution of the United States. What was the purpose in creating? Who was this created for? And who was it explicitly not created for? I mean, I think all of that is a lot more explicit in the Constitution, but it's also very explicit in, the words of Oscar B. Mayer, who was the evil, Hollywood architect.
Louis Mayer.
Yeah. Yes. And so with him, I think he very clearly said that he would create an award show so that filmmakers would tap dance to his tune the way that he wanted, and he could control all of Hollywood. That was the purpose. And I think it becomes like, you can see it, you watch a movie and you're like, oh, this is Oscar bait, because people know, okay, these are the things that win people Oscars. I'm going to go do that. And we see that a lot in our, serious Black movies as well. You see people like, this feels like you're trying really hard to get an Oscar. Like, this is why you're doing this. And this is why you're telling the story this way. And this is the audience for whom you're telling the story. And that's always going to be a problem when, it's a movie that is showcasing Black trauma or Black suffering. You're always going to make Black people suffer more when the audience is that white gaze. And it worked sometimes. So, Steve McQueen, and 12 Years a Slave, and Lupita Nyong'o, and they got their Oscars for that. So it does work sometimes. I think it also pretty much backfires. I think Queen and Slim couldn't have backfired more. People, apparently awards voters wouldn't even sit down to watch it. So you did all this to Black people. You had a whole fake Black Lives Matter protest march where a Black child sees being martyred by the police as some honorable thing that he wants for himself, and goes and kills a police officer so that he can then be martyred. And what, have you even seen a march on television? Like that to me, it was just very clear. There was just a huge disconnect there, but it was showing oh, cops, even Black cops, really do have a reason to fear, putting in these things, that would assuage your white audience, having the person that turned them in also be Black. It's just see, this isn't an anti-white movie. You guys can watch it and give us awards for it. And it's still backfired. It's still
still a bad movie.
Oh, it's a terrible movie. It is from top to bottom. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. Yeah, it's just bad. So I think too with that, it's just you see Black filmmakers who get caught in this trap, because again, this is how you excel in this industry. So you get caught in this trap of, if I can get awards, then I can actually make a living. I don't want to be struggling. I don't want to worry about paying rent and eating food. All those things matter, not knocking that. We have to survive. But I think when you get to that place where you'll do anything to survive, which is what capitalism wants us to be in that mindset and be in that position, then you can be easily controlled. You can create stories that further this, idea. If you're the epitome of your career is white supremacist validation trophies, the art that you make is going to reflect that. And I think when we get free of that, when we get free of this idea of, the more we try, the harder we try, to appease them, the more they'll be appeased. If we get out of that mindset, because it's just not true. We have, you're not going to be the person. You're not going to be the one. So I was saying this is the 97th Oscars. This is not going to be the 1 year where it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So if we can just let go of this idea that maybe I'll be the first, or finding joy in being the first, or, breaking down ceilings and barriers within these white supremacist institutions, then we can actually be liberated to tell the stories that our souls require us to tell for our own healing, for our people's healing. Your art will have a higher intention that's beyond you and beyond them. I think those are the best films. Those are the best stories, and you can make a great film and it can win Oscars, like Moonlight. I think Moonlight is, the only movie I've seen in theaters more than I've seen Sinners. I saw Moonlight 10 times before I was a critic, so I was not getting free screenings and stuff like that. So I think you can, do both. I think Sinners is going to get some hardware for sure. I'm in the Critics' Choice Association, and I have no doubt that, it's a highly rated film among critics. I have no doubt that Sinners will pick up some hardware from our organization as well. But I think the lesson is that these things are extra. And when you tell a story, when you tap into Ryan tapped into his ancestry. He tapped into his Mississippi roots. He tapped into a story that he didn't know, that he had to go and learn and research and, spend time with and get deep in the mud with, in order to birth this story. And I think when we do that, it's a level of liberation, because that is the point of making art. The point of making art is to liberate and to be liberated. And so, I think that's another reason why, with leaving capitalist stack alive and having, smoke go on, to heaven, this idea of one for them, one for me is a concept I think that, a lot of filmmakers who have been able to make successful commercial films tell themselves, let's make some money. And then with that money, I get to pour into, my production company. I get to pour into new filmmakers. I get to, do all these other things that I want to do that's just for me. I think that's just a reality that, marginalized filmmakers have to contend with at some point. But until we get rid of this idea, I think the Oscars would flop without us anyway. And I would just say, just like the Golden Globes were dead. We killed the Golden Globes. And they just decided, let's bring it back. And I'm just like, we had a victory here. And it was just like, we can divest from all this stuff. They need us. We don't need them. We've already seen Halle Berry. She's talked several times. Monique talked several times about the ways that these Oscars did not actually advance their careers. Actually made their careers harder. So that doesn't work the same way for us either. So what is, you get the trophy, you got it on your, even looking at somebody like Lupita Nyong'o, compared to Margot Robbie. I think they got their Oscars around the same time. Margot Robbie has been in so many more movies than Lupita Nyong'o has. She's had so much more commercial success and as a lead in movies than Lupita Nyong'o has had. These are not indicative of our talent. They're not indicative of what we can give to the world. And they're not all that beneficial on the grand scheme of things. There's never been another Black woman Best Actress Oscar winner since Halle Berry in Monsters Ball. I mean, I was in high school. You know, it's just like, it's not opening doors. It's not, whatever we think it's not doing that. So if we can instead put our time, intention, energy, creativity, love back into us, back into what liberates us, then we can see these things for the traps that they are.
I promise I'm going to let you go. I promise I am. I want to keep you here all day. I know I can't. I'm struggling with that. Piggybacking or veggie backing, whatever your preference is, off of this conversation, let me go back to the theme of liberation, of creating art that's liberating. So you coined the Hurston-Walker Test. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with something known as the Vernon philosophy of media avoidance?
No, tell me.
So I'm going to give you the short version. There are longer versions, but the short version, it's coined by a man named Jared Ball, who is one of the co-founders of this platform that I am on, Black Liberation Media. And he says, the Vernon philosophy, it's an immaterial boycott, not a physical boycott of Black film, of Black movies, but it's more of an intellectual prophylactic, something to help you prepare when you sit down to consume Black media. Mm-hmm. He says, no oppressed groups should look to see themselves in films, despite that being the attempt, because it's always going to be a fraudulent projection of that community. The Vernon philosophy is more of an intellectual boycott of sorts to prepare yourself to deal with something when you go see these films or engage this media, and then to encourage certain questions. How do we know what we know? Why do we like what we like? And think critically about the stories and narratives and the product that is put before us. That these are commercial products, movies, films, etc., films, television. These are commercial products that are put before us. What is the reason they are put before us? What is the work that they are designed to do? He also says of the Vernon philosophy, the purpose is to overtly and aggressively challenge the tendency among us all to desire recognition from power or see ourselves positively reflected by power, i.e. in movies, from Hollywood, and to focus more on assuming power, the only position from which to control the popular dissemination of media, symbol, and image. Your thoughts?
That's a lot.
Yeah, I do. But I had to get it in here. I know.
I think that all that is very important. I do think we must watch things with our eyes wide open. That's what I'm saying. When I watch something like Sinners and I understand going to see it 7 times and the way that I am participating in a commercial product, I'm making Warner Brothers more money, I think understanding what they want us to do with information is important, but I don't think it's everything, because they're not the center of my world and my ideology. What they want me to do does not consume. It's good to be aware of, but it does not consume me. For example, I just finished the season finale of Andor on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. and then watched it's a Star Wars show, then watched basically the finale movie of Andor. Was a movie that's already been in existence since 2016, Rogue One, and then watched A New Hope, which is the first Star Wars movie that came out in 1977. But chronologically, this is the order that these Star Wars stories go in. This is from Disney Plus. Do I think that Disney Plus wants me to have an anti-fascism guide? No, I don't. I think that they are the oligarchs. They are the empire. They fund the empire. They just sent, $1 million to the Zionist entity, in October 2023. And who knows how much more money they have sent since then. So I don't think that they have, as an organization of empire, desire to instruct the audience on how to tear down that empire.
Okay.
However, Andor, and I just wrote about this on Black Girl Watching, Andor is an anti-fascist guide to resistance. That's what the show is. And yeah, there will be people who watch it and say, wow, I feel really good that I have this information. That's enough resistance for today. And then there's other people that are going to be like waking up to something, recognizing, in the genocide of the fictional Gorman people in Andor, they're going to see the Palestinian people and they're going to make the connection. They're going to make the connection between Imperial News Now on Andor and CNN, and the way that these media properties manufacture consent for genocide. They're going to look at the Andali people and see the Hawaiian people. They're going to start making some connections between U.S. imperialism and the fictional stuff that they see on the show. And that is going to lead them to further political education, further community organizing, further love and understanding of what it takes to be in resistance, to what it takes to be in rebellion. I mean, this is not a romanticization at all of a revolutionary life. It's actually a deeply traumatic series. It's very gritty. It's very grounded. But what that does is show that there is something worth sacrificing for, that there is something greater, even if you don't live to see what you're sacrificing for, to know that somebody else behind you is going to see it. One of the greatest lines from that show, I burn my life to make a sunrise I'll never see. This is, it's along the lines of so many other revolutionaries in real life that we've seen. And I think if that sparks in somebody an understanding that there's something greater out here that we could be fighting for, even at the cost of our own lives, that we should do it. For me, I'm watching it and I'm thinking of, the Palestinian professor and poet, Rifat Al-Arir, who said, I'm an academic and the most violent thing I have in my house is an Expo marker, but I will throw that marker at the Israeli soldiers if they come to attack me, if it's the last thing that I do. And that's how I feel too as a writer. If the last thing I can do is throw my pen at the empire, I'm going to do that. And I got this from watching this show. So yes, we need to be aware. We need to go into the things that we're watching, particularly, Black media or anything that's meant to represent us with, I think those guidelines, I think they're very good to understand what the intention is for that art and decide how we feel about it. But I also don't think that their feelings about it are the most important thing, that we can override their intentions, and particularly if their intentions are not for our betterment.
Okay. 2 more. I promise. I'm going to let you go. I promise I'm going to unhand you. I promise. Your most recent essay on your Substack, I believe it's your most recent, you say that we will always need slave movies. Slave in quotation marks. I want you to talk to our audience about that, but let me read you this quote from your essay real quick. We will always need slave narratives, even though you say, quote, the films in the genre that Hollywood studio heads and financiers usually greenlight and champion are the ones that eroticize stories of Black enslavement and promote white savior narratives. The last corporate-approved addition to the genre is 2020's Antebellum, a film so masturbatory, I hope I can say that on radio, in its commitment to eroticize Black trauma, that its co-directors and writers, Gerard Bush and Christopher Renz, put Quentin Tarantino and Django Unchained to shame.
Yeah, I said that.
Elucidate, please.
I think the issue is not with the genre of slave stories, quote unquote. Now that's what I'm trying to say. It's not the most recent. The most recent on my site is the Andor piece about it being an anti-fascist guide. But yes, right before that, I wrote this piece in response to some, again, those comments. It was such an odd mix of comments responding to the movie Sinners. On the one hand, it was, wow, no Black trauma, which is ridiculous. And the other hand, it was, I'm sorry, Ryan, I just don't I'm just tired of seeing slave movies. And so that's what made me write the piece, because I'm like, this is 1932.
Now, just real quick, jumping in, people said the same thing about the remake of Color Purple. It's like, I don't want to see a slave movie anymore. I'm like, there's no slavery in the Color Purple.
But I think the other, that's what I went ahead and I wrote this piece and gave some people some more grace, because even the Color Purple, we are documenting, and Sinners especially is documenting the evolution of slavery. So no, it's not, you live, I mean, it seems like it's not slavery, because slavery at this time has been, outlawed, quote unquote, by the 13th Amendment, except for the loophole about if we are punishing you for a crime, then we will put you back in slavery. But so we do see that. We see that with the chain gangs. So that is slavery. So we see Delta Slim's friends along that road, doing that road work and chained together. And singing their work songs. That is an evolution of slavery. We see Sammy and his family, they're sharecroppers. They're picking cotton, and they're getting paid in wooden nickels, to the point that, Smoke and Stack's business could never actually be successful, because their clientele don't have the money to even help it to be a successful business, which I think is another commentary on, Black capitalism and what audience you're going to have to serve, and whether or not this is something that people would want to do, understanding that Black people don't have the money to sustain your Black capitalist dreams.
What?
So I do think this movie is talking about slavery in a lot of different ways, because the point of the movie, I think, is how do Black people get free? It's like all these different avenues. You have Delta Slim, who tries to find freedom in music and the drink. Sammy, he's finding freedom in music. Smoke and Stack, they're trying to find freedom through Black capitalism and gangsterism and all of that. There are all these different ways, and they're all kind of converging. Bo and Grace, they're finding freedom through anti-Black laws that allow them to have two businesses.
Allow them to move through both worlds.
And while Smoke and Stack can't even have one business, so it is a movie about.
I wasn't going. Okay, I'm supposed to be interviewing you. I'm not supposed to be, but I just had to throw in there. Stack is a vampire and he tells Smoke, we were never going to be free.
Exactly.
We were never going to be free.
Mm-hmm. This is the way. That's
doomed from the start.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
but
I think
we're talking about slave movies though.
But that's what I'm saying. So I gave people grace, you know, and I think the other part of it too is while they're complaining about they didn't want a slave movie, they're asking about what's a wooden nickel. You don't know enough about slavery and what our people went through to say that you're done with it. And I think when you look around and make the connections that Ryan is clearly making to slavery and all of these traps that capitalism still creates for us, anti-Black capitalism specifically, white supremacist capitalism specifically makes for us, we don't have the luxury to be done with slave stories because slavery is not done with us. You know, there in the state of California where I am, homelessness, and there's actually a Supreme Court decision. So this is across the country. It is now legal for states to outlaw homelessness. So where do you go?
Where you gonna go?
If you don't have any, you're homeless, you don't have anywhere to be, and it's now a crime to be homeless. Is that not some variation of the Black codes?
Of the vagrancy laws?
Where you could just pick up, exactly, the anti-vagrancy, where you could just pick up anybody for doing nothing and put them into the prison system. Now you're also having the federal government that's funding and investing in all of these private prisons. You've got concentration camps in El Salvador and Libya, or was it Libya or Liberia? Somewhere in Northern Africa, they are trying to send more Black people or any so-called undocumented people. And they've also deported U.S. citizens at this point as well, because they're minors and their parents are undocumented. So they've deported the whole family, including U.S. citizens. And so if we're at this place now where you can be imprisoned for anything indefinitely, because they're also trying to get rid of habeas corpus. So, you know, they are bringing back slavery stronger than ever. Everybody that's in a gulag in El Salvador, they're in slavery. That's why that man is not, being allowed to come back, even though the Supreme Court said the United States had to facilitate his return. He can't come back. That is a direct blow to everything that the United States is trying to put into place. This is the end stage of capitalism. We're all headed to the daggone gulags. Like this is just the natural end of this system of exploitation. So because this country that we live in is not done with slavery, we can't be done with slavery. We need to understand wage theft. We need to understand all of these different political goals and how they converge to keep us and put us in positions where we are financially dependent on employers and their good graces in order to have health care, in order to have all of these things. When they take away all of these things from us and we have nowhere left to go but prison to get 3 hots in a cot, we don't have the time to say things like, we're done with slavery. We don't need to see this. So we need to be able to make connections between what this country has done and what this country continues to do today. We need to be able to also see and learn. We're in a period of Sankofa. We need to be going back. Like, this is what I love so much about Sinners. Ryan went back in his ancestry to move forward for the grief that he was feeling for his uncle who passed away without him being able to say goodbye. And making this art, he was able to go back, to go forward. There are answers in the resistance of enslaved people in this country. You know, with all these white people now who are just like, oh my gosh, fascism, what do we do? Like, we've already been here. We've been living under fascism. Welcome to the party. Now that you're here, why don't you listen to what it is that we've been doing to survive and join us
Get to
in
work.
these. Get to work. Seriously, get to work dismantling these systems, because they were always going to come for you too. They were always going to come for you too. And I think that's the thing that we think when we're trying to, we're not thinking about liberation. That's why, why Black capitalism is such a dangerous ideology, because you're not actually thinking about liberation. You're thinking about a measure of safety that is more safe than other Black people. And the reality is, there is no such thing as safety when other people aren't safe. Somebody's going to jack you up. Somebody's going to steal your car. And it's going to be deserved, because you're hoarding all of these things when people don't have anything. That's just not how it works. So I think when we start to be able to connect these dots and understand that liberation only comes when all of us are free, then we can actually look at what the ancestors did to try to get to that freedom and learn from that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can commune with our ancestors and ask them questions and learn from them and grow from them and take the baton forward in that way, not by continuing to build up the system that disrespected and enslaved and desecrated them in the first place, but by dismantling that system and making sure that nobody ever has to go through what our ancestors had to go through. That's what liberation is.
I've been speaking with Brooke Obie, journalist, author, film critic, filmmaker, curator, and editor of Black Girl Watching on Substack. You are, in addition to being a film critic and pouring your thoughts out on Black Girl Watching, your various wonderful analyses, you are also a filmmaker. You've got a film called Abanitu. Is that how you pronounce it?
Abanitu, yes.
Abanitu. Please tell us about this film and if it is showing anywhere soon.
I really am so proud of this film, Abanitu. It is the story of my family's 119-year-old organic farm in Person County, North Carolina. That is also the name of the farm. It's called Abanitu, which means from the heart of God. And so we're creating, as our ancestors did on this same land, produce, herbal remedies that provide sustenance, that never use any pesticides or any sort of poisons or anything, because the goal is health. And so, this land in the story of the documentary, it's showing the history of the Obie family. My great-great-grandmother, Lucy Obie, bought this farm in 1906. She was a single mother of 5 children, and she bought the land for $50. It was rocky terrain, and that's probably why she was able to buy it even for $50, which was quite a bit of money at the time, from all of her savings of keeping house and doing farm work for other people. And so for her to be a dark-skinned, single, 36-year-old mother of 5 children and buy this land and create from this rocky terrain sustenance that has remained for 100 and almost 20 years on Juneteenth weekend, I think is a testament to who Black people are in general, but also specifically for our family. It's been this land that has kept our family together. There's been several times where people have tried to take the land from us. Individual citizens have caused significant amounts of trauma to our family over the land, and the government of North Carolina, Power and Light, electricity company took land from us as well. And all of these things and tragedies have attempted to break the family apart and almost were successful. And so this land still being here, this farm still being active, is a testament to our insistence on survival and a lesson. I made this as a documentary where my elders could tell their stories, which they've not told. There's a lot of tragedy in our families that people just are not comfortable dealing with out loud in general, but also, you know, when you're doing something for a public consumption, that people were very hesitant about, you know, people knowing our story. But it was important for me to know my history. And so it was a very delicate balance of trying to, you know, provide a space that felt safe and comforting for my elders, while also insisting on telling the truth so that I would know it, so that my younger relatives would know this as well and come and approach life in a totally different way. I say all the time, I wrote this novel, Book of Addis, back in 2016. And it's about an enslaved Black girl in Virginia, where I'm from. And my story would have been different. If I had known my great-great-grandmother Lucy's story, she was born right after slavery. She was not enslaved, but her grandmother, or her mother and her grandmother were likely enslaved. I would have written a totally different story. That book was my attempt to try and connect with the pieces of something. I'd gotten a DNA test, got my African ancestry, you know, and was trying to, I wrote this novel to try to connect with something, just searching. And if my elders had talked to me and told me my actual history, I would have, you know, I could have come to the place that I am now
a lot sooner,
a decade ago. And so I want something different for my younger siblings, younger relatives. I want them to know who they are and who, in the women in particular, that they came from. Because those are the ones that are that's our, you know, our ancestry traces back to women. We don't know the name of my great-great-grandmother Lucy's father. You know, we know her mother's name. And so our ancestry traces back to Black women. And I want particularly the younger generation of all genders to understand and respect and feel a sense of pride in who we are, and not to see slavery as something that should be shameful for us. We didn't enslave us. They enslaved us. That's white history. The transatlantic slave trade is white history. Our resilience, our survival, that is Black history. And that's what I want our generation and the younger generations to know and understand from this movie. I stay tuned to Black Girl Watching. I will have more, just did a screening, and I will have more information about future screenings on Black Girl Watching. But also on my website, brookeobie.com, you can see a list of upcoming screenings. I'll keep that there as well.
Black Girl Watching on Substack and brookeobie.com, BROOKEOBIE.com. That is how folks can keep up with you and what you are doing, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Brooke Obie, thank you so much for allowing me to intrude over an hour of your time today. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you so much for your work and all that you do. Thank you for being on RootWork today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this platform. You know, it's such important work that you do here and at Black Liberation Media. And I'm just thrilled to have a tiny part of it. So thank you. I appreciate you.
You are always welcome to come back and get ready, because I am going to bring you back. So
oh, great.
Keep me penciled in. I'll let you know when we're coming back. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. That was Brooke Obie, editor curator of Black Girl Watching, which is her platform on Substack. BrookeObie.com is the website. I did put some information into the show description, including links to some of the essays that we talked about here on the show. I cannot, unfortunately, I don't have the copy with me. But for folks who are in Los Angeles, who have seen this or who will see this, coming up on June 1st, 4 to 7 p.m., Black Girl Watching, i.e. Brooke Obie, and some other folks are putting together Club Juke, a Sinners movie discussion and dance party that's going to be at 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard in South LA near Crenshaw and Florence. At one point, that was where Black Men Build Los Angeles was having their meetings. Project 43 Teen Post, I believe, operates out of there. It is not free, $20 donation. But if you go to Brooke Obie's Instagram, which I don't have, but if you go to the Instagram, you will see all of the information there. If you are in Los Angeles, if you will be in Los Angeles and you want to take part of Club Juke, I'm not going to be able to make it, Brooke, but I want some of them gifts that you're going to have. Speaking of gifts, if you appreciate the work that we're doing here on Black Liberation Media, you should see the ticker going down, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, patreon.com. You can holler at Black Liberation Media there. You can holler at me on Cash App and on Venmo and PayPal and Zelle, and hell, I'll come by your house if you want to give me some money. I ain't, it's all good with me. Oh, thank you, Joshua. And thank you also, Joshua. This is Brooke's Instagram, so it's in the chat for folks to click on and go on over there and get that information. So, unfortunately, this was not live because I'm sure you all had questions you wanted to ask of Brooke. But if you go to Substack, Black Girl Watching, BrookeObie.com, or on Instagram, you can track it down and have at it. All good. So, again, thank you so much to Brooke Obie for giving of her time. Thank you all so much for giving up some of your time on Memorial Day. I'm still kind of salty that y'all ain't fixed me no plate, but I'll get over it. It is 8 p.m. on the East Coast. Yeah, y'all done put the plates away and wrapped everything up. But if you in LA, you still got time to give me a plate. So I'm gonna go on and get up out of here and wait for these plates to arrive. Thank you again so much for partaking in Root Work today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I asked you to like in the beginning so you wouldn't forget, but here I am now reminding you, please like the show. Please subscribe to Root Work and to Black Liberation Media if you haven't done so already. And please share the link. So, wait a minute. Oh, Joshua got a plate for me in Miami. Best got some Haitian food, huh? Okay. Raul's gonna ship it. Cool. I'll take it. All right, y'all. I'm gonna get on about out of here. Stop clowning. It's time to go. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe, and I'll holler at y'all later. Peace.